Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Howdy, Red O'Loughlin here on Talking Heads on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. We're starting a new series of six programs, 6 discussions, 6 days, always on Talking Heads this time every week. And our topic is lifestyles and longevity. The decisions we make every single day, how do they affect our old age? How do they affect our health? How do they affect our ability to enjoy life? And that's what we're going to be talking about. So let's just pop into slide number 1 here, and there we go. As an introduction, disclaimer, I'm a researcher. I am not a doctor. I've never been in the medical field, never worked in the pharmaceutical industry. I fell in love with chemistry at 15 years of age and a sophomore in high school. I found it fascinating. It answered a lot of my questions as to why things happen. And it wasn't until I got a degree in it, chemistry. I loved it so much I got a degree, but I didn't get a chance to practice it because I got an invitation to Vietnam. By the time I came back, it was not practical for me to try to jump into that industry with that many years being separated. However, just about 10 years ago now, my wife came down with breast cancer, and I was shifted my focus from motivation and self-improvement, those kinds of things, self-esteem. I wrote a book or 2 in that area. I did a lot of presentations, sold my books and CDs in the back of the room. And I started researching the human body at the cellular level. I'm looking for what is the cause and effect of things happening? Why does this cause this to happen? And can I stop it from happening? Can I slow it down? Can I speed it up? And those are the things that I started looking at with regard to some of the side effects from the medications that my wife was taking. Chemo drugs primarily. And it worked wonders because it changed my whole psyche from motivation and self-improvement, which I started in that, and I read a book a week for about 3.5 years. Every single time I got something on self-improvement, I just devoured it. And the same thing with chemistry. I read a lot of stuff every single day on, what causes Alzheimer's, what this pathway does, how does this thing react? And that's what I'm doing here. So with regard to lifestyle and longevity, we're going to be touching on several areas we've touched on in the past on Talking Heads, but most of the thing we're going to be talking about is what are we doing, what can we do, what happens when we do certain things. So with that, let's just jump into longevity. In lifestyle, the lifestyle that I'm talking about here, this is the way we live, the things we do every single day, the foods we eat, the exercise we do, the stresses we have, the people we talk to, the sleep we get, everything that we do on a daily basis is considered a lifestyle. Now, scientists have broken those lifestyles into different areas. They call it sedentary, basically sit on the couch, watch TV. An active lifestyle, maybe you go to the gym a couple times a week or more. Semi-active, maybe you're out walking 2 or 3 times a week. You're active in certain social clubs and things like that. There's the outdoorsy type, the people who camp most of the time. They're out there and doing things with their hands. We got the social butterflies that are constantly involved in all sorts of stuff. And we have the solitary, not the ones in prison in solitary, but those people that just isolate themselves. Each of those lifestyles have pluses and minuses. But if you're looking for a nice, healthy overall lifestyle, we're going to be talking about that. What are some examples of the things we do when we make choices on a daily basis? Well, diet is probably one of the biggest ones. We choose the foods we eat every day. Exercise, we make choices to do it, not to do it. Stress management, unfortunately, most of us choose not to manage stress. We just reach out there and we grab a hold of whatever is stressing us and we don't let go. That's one of those things that a lot of us are, because we're never trained on how to let go of stress. Weight management, again, we all seem to arrive at a certain weight and it seems to stay pretty much there no matter what we do. Hydration, something we think about so easy, just drink water. Yet it's actually an issue because a lot of people are dehydrated all the time. Sleep, something we do, most of us do every day, but the quality of sleep is what is really and truly important. Toxin management, we just spent 6 weeks talking about toxins. If you want to know something about toxins, please go into the archives and YouTube for USA Global TV and Radio Network. Pull up Talking Heads, Red O'Loughlin, and we just did a series of 6 episodes on toxins. Smoking, alcohol, recreational drugs, over-the-counter drugs, and even our moods, our feelings, our anxieties, our depressions, everything that affects our self-esteem, our presentation to other people. These all add up in the big scheme of things with regard to uh, our lifestyle. Longevity. It's a fairly simple thing. It's our life expectancy. How long are we expected to live? So in the 1900s, about 47 years, 45, 50 years. Somebody back there, that was their life expectancy. If they lived past 50 years, and a lot of them did, a lot of them lived to 60s, 70s, 80s. But the average person, 47 was about it. Now, by the time we get 50 years later, 1950, now we're looking at nearly 70 years of age for most people. And when we look at it today, statistically, if you make 70, you'll make 80. It's just a lot of people don't make 70. But in 2019, just before COVID hit, the average life expectancy in the United States was 79. There are other countries around the world where it's 80, 81, 82 years of age. But it fell off about 2 years. And because a lot of older people died with the pandemic, that all averaged out. And so now we're looking at that 77, almost 78 in the year 2023. So things do change over time. Most of the time we improve, but sometimes we don't. Aging is basically a time-related deterioration. We see aging, you see a lot, maybe if you take a look at something that's rusting. It's bright and shiny, then it has a dull coating on it, then it's got a very light coating of rust, and pretty soon it's all rusty. Well, that's oxidation. The same thing kind of happens in a sense with us. As we age, we have a time-related, the older we get, deterioration of our life functions. These can be our biological, our social ability, our ability to interface with other people, our psychological, our mental capacity. Those are all things that are time related, that are part of aging. And just because one goes bad doesn't mean that we can't maybe resurrect it a little bit, because there are some things we can do. There are some things that are beyond our control. What do we have choices of? Well, I think for most of us, we choose the foods we eat. We go to the grocery store. We like this and this and this. We go down that row. We pick them out. We eat the same things over and over again. If I ask, what are the, if you're eating leafy green vegetables, tell me which leafy green vegetables you're eating. I'll be quite honest. I don't eat as many as I should. But when I do focus on that part of my life, I generally eat about 6 to 8 different kinds of leafy green vegetables. Otherwise, sometimes I don't eat any. And yes, I know it's a problem, but I'm human like everyone else. And you get off the track, and then you got to get back on the track again. But it's the foods we choose. If we spend most of our time walking the aisles in the middle of the store, we're probably walking in the wrong areas. We need to walk around the outside edge where you have the fresh fruits and vegetables. You have your other things that are not in packages. And so those are the things we need to look at. So what do we choose to eat? What weight do we maintain? Is it healthy for our height? Those are critical items. Sometimes somebody can be overweight, 10, 20, 30 pounds, and be perfectly healthy. Some people can be right at their absolute best weight and be unhealthy. You can't tell if somebody's diabetic. You can't tell if somebody has high blood pressure. There are a lot of issues that go on, which is normal weight people, and things that are perfectly healthy on somebody just slightly overweight. Activities. What exercises do we choose? A lot of people have a habit of exercising. They go out and they run every day, they walk every day, they go to the gym, they do whatever they're going to do. And that's part of their lifestyle. That's part of those things they choose to do. But just like sitting in front of the TV for 6 or 8 or 10 hours a day, that's an activity that we choose to do. What are our relationships? Relationships are super critical the older you get. Those social interactions are exceptionally important when you're starting to look at uh, mental issues with regard to health. Sleep. That's the time that's given for our body to recharge, repair, do all those functions that we need to have done. There's a lot of things that happen during sleep, and we'll talk about them. But the sleep has to be quality sleep. It can't be something that's drug induced, alcohol induced, whatever it may happen to be. Then all of a sudden you wake up and you're not, and you're back and forth. You're turning stress, getting into the issue of I'm thinking about this. I can't go to sleep. Stress affects all of us, but it's not what happens to us. It's what we hold on to. And the habits, all those other things that we develop and we maintain every single day, are they really doing us an important function in our lives? We'll look at a lot of these things. What are some of the causes of aging? If I asked you, what causes you to age? Most people do not know. Most people know factors of aging, smoking, obesity, high blood pressure. These are all factors that can increase or decrease the level of the quickness of aging. So if I want to accelerate or decelerate the aging process, I can look at some of those factors and make corrections in my life and slow down the aging process. But the two primary causes of aging are human growth hormone. We create a lot of it as a kid. As a baby, as a toddler, we're probably making 2,000 milligrams a day. By the time we get to be 70, 80 years of age, we're down to 100. And that's a big change. But when we need it as a toddler, as a preteen, as a teenager, we need it because our bodies are growing. Somebody has to be in charge of all that chaos that's happening around us. If there wasn't anybody there in charge, we'd just be going every which way. I'm talking about internal, biologically, hormonal, enzymatic, everything. So human growth hormone is the big gorilla in the middle of the room. But as you get older, it kind of fades into the background. We don't have anybody in charge anymore. We have a little thing at the end of our DNA. A DNA is kind of a double spiral, a helix. At the end, there's a cap, and this cap is called a telomere. It's like the end of your shoelace, a caplet, that little plastic thing. Every time the cell replicates, it gets shorter. Well, the amount of telomere that gets cut off with each replication, you have control over. If you have diabetes, you're overweight, you have heart issues, you have other things that are stressing you out, maybe instead of a small amount of telomere loss, you have a larger amount. I equate it to, assume a telomere is the same length as a roll of pennies, 50 pennies. And normally I would lose 1 penny every time my cell replicates. But if I have several issues health-wise, maybe I'm losing 2 or 3 pennies every time that cell replicates. As soon as I get to the end of that telomere, there's none left. That cell dies. It's gone. And so that's part of our process of aging. So low levels of HGS, HGH indicate a short life because we don't have as much control over everything that's going on. The same thing with the telomeres. The cells die sooner and we don't have anything to replace them. Okay, we talked about human growth hormone. We talked about we make a lot when we're little and depletes over time. And it's a natural progression. It's just part of the normal aging. These things happen. What keeps or raises, just because it goes down over time, doesn't mean we can't raise it back up and raise it back up and raise it back up. There are things we can do every single day, lifestyle changes, choices that we make, nutritional balance, again, the diet options that we choose, fasting. Fasting is probably the absolute fastest way to increase human growth hormone in the body. I'll talk a little bit more about that down the road. Blood sugar is a critical factor in how high blood sugar levels are, how high HGH levels are, the level and type of exercise. In particular, right now, on HGH, it's the type of exercise. When I look at telomere length, it's going to be a different kind of exercise. The quality of our sleep. Laughter. Why is laughter important? Because it's a great stress reduction. It's instantaneous. If you have a good belly laugh, if you're smiling at things, those are things that de-stress us and can, in fact, raise our HGH levels. Stress management, we talked about that very briefly. It's not what happens to it, it's what we hang on to, what we don't let go. And there are so many ways to manage stress. Now, what causes our HGH? If we have a normal progression downward over time, what accelerates the HGH loss? Well, hormone imbalance. If we're not getting the right nutrition, some hormones are going to be more than others. Some uh, minerals, some vitamins, some enzymes, they're all going to be out of balance, out of whack, and it's going to cause lower levels of HGH. If we're overweight, we have excess fat. If we're just a normal aging process, if we're eating trans fats instead of good quality fats, high quality fats, inflammation, again, a dietary issue. If our sugar levels are high, our stress levels are high, if we're not paying attention to our toxins, our sleep is not what we desire. They all have a tendency to accelerate the lessening, the lowering, the degradation of HGH level. Let's talk very briefly about telomere length. As I said earlier, you have a cell, it's your DNA, and it's a double helix wound about each other. When the cell replicates, goes from one to two separate cells, we lose just a little bit of that telomere length. It erodes away. But when we keep our nutritional balance, we exercise regularly, we maintain our stress management, we remove toxins as best we can, we keep that erosion to as little as possible in the sense of a roll of pennies, one penny. If we are not doing that, then it becomes two pennies or more. So more erosion occurs when our hormones are out of whack, out of balance. Our stress accumulates and we're not getting rid of it. We're not having any kind of variety of exercise or even exercise at all. Our dietary habits are out the window. Depression, anxiety, obesity. We start accumulating those toxins, smoking, excess. I mean, just a lot of things that are common sense. You know, if I'm smoking, I shouldn't be. Okay, that has a factor. It's a factor in my life. If I'm drinking excess alcohol, a lot of these things. If I'm excessively overweight, if I'm not exercising, if I'm depressed most of the time, all these things have an effect on your health. In this particular case, they're having an effect on how fast you're losing the telomeres every time a cell replicates. Okay, let's get into HGH for a while. It's just a normal process of aging. HGH is made in our pituitary gland in our head. It's regulated by the hypothalamus. But there's two hormones. You have a growth hormone releasing hormone, GHRH, and you have a growth inhibiting releasing hormone, GIRH. Well, you have a balance between those two. All these two hormones are made in the pituitary, and that balance determines the amount of HGH that's made. So when you start having an imbalance of those two, now we start looking at HGH initiating that aging process that we start looking older, we're feeling older, we're fatigued all the time. We lose our hair changes color, wrinkles start to appear. We just can't do the things we used to do when we were younger. So that's part of aging, but we also have control over a lot of that stuff. If I'm looking at generically, HGH varies by age. We're making a lot more of it when we're younger than when we're older. Men and women make it at different rates. Our hormone balance, if we're balanced hormonally, we have a pretty good shot at maintaining a much longer life and in better health. Diet choices, we already talked about exercise and stress. They all affect those levels of HGH. Our HGH is created when we sleep. It starts about an hour after we get into a deep sleep. And I'll talk more about sleep later on, but there's certain cycles that go through the night. And we go through a cycle and we sort of wake up, we go through a cycle. But each time we get into that deep sleep, our HGH is just coming and being flowing out of us. HGH can affect us down the road if we're not making it as we should. We can see bone density issues as we get older, memory loss, cardiovascular problems, and even affects our immune system. Okay, if I'm looking at HGH, sometimes you see these supplements. Oh, HGH, I can buy a bottle of it, and nope, doesn't work that way. If you take HGH as a supplement through the mouth, it cannot survive stomach acid. So basically, you might as well throw it in the toilet, trash. It's not doing any good. If you have an HGH supplement, it has to be intravenous. In other words, they stick it through your arm and you get fed into your bloodstream. They have a synthetic HGH that's approved for specific medical causes: Turner syndrome, Prader-Willi syndrome, chronic kidney insufficiency. There's some people that are born with a weight to their body mass and everything that's kind of outside the norm. They're not developing those HGH levels as they should if they had a normal birth. And so sometimes that synthetic HGH can be given to them until their bodies are big enough that they can handle it on their own. Short bowel syndrome is another one, HIV, AIDS. Sometimes even when you get pituitary tumors, it's not allowing the pituitary to create that HGH, and you start looking at aging rapidly. Let's look at what are the things that can get involved in there. Nutritional imbalance. In other words, if I follow, I talk many times in my shows about the Walls Protocol. Dr. Terry Walls wrote a book, the Walls Protocol, WAHLS Protocol. And it talks about nutritional balance. There's about 32 nutrients the body needs on an every single day balance, your vitamins, your minerals, your enzymes, all those kinds of things you need every single day to keep in balance. When you're out of balance, it affects the way HGH is formed. We have certain hormones that get us to eat. Ghrelin in our stomach is created, and when we don't have food, the ghrelin says to the brain, I need to eat. Well, as soon as the brain starts getting food into it, our fat starts to say, hey, let's make some leptin and tell the brain to shut off. And then based on what we've eaten, insulin starts to form. Depending on other things going on in our life, cortisol is there. But they all affect how we eat. And if we're constantly eating 2, 3, 4, 5, it's like 2, say 4 or 5 or 6 meals a day, we're not allowing the normal ghrelin, leptin, and insulin processes to moderate on their own. And as by such, we're affecting that eating, we're affecting our production of HGH. You're also affecting your blood sugar levels, which can become an issue down the road. Hydration is critical for HGH. And again, most of us don't keep our hydration levels up the way we should. Amino acids, those are things, there's several of them that are essential we have to get from our foods, but they found that some individual amino acids, if you go out and buy, like I take arginine on a daily basis, that's just one of those amino acids. I take it for increasing the flexibility of my heart vessels and things that just, to me, a nitric acid is one of those things that we really need in the nitric oxide in the body. But orthogonine, arginine, glutamate, gamma amino butyric acid, those all increase HGH hormone. There's a thing called L-DOPA, DOPA, that is marketed as an anti-aging drug. There's a lot of side effects from it. Be real careful if that's something you're taking, because I'm going to take this anti-aging drug and it's going to make me look young and beautiful. Beware. There's a lot of issues that are associated with that one. Okay. If we want to increase HGH, I'm going to say almost instantly, fasting, absolute by far the fastest way to increase your HGH. If you consider that you're eating and it takes 4, 5, 6, maybe 8 hours, conservatively speaking, to fully digest the food you have, now your body has no food. It's going into its glycogen or to its fat storage. That is basically the time we start our fast. So if I start my fast, let's say I finish eating at 6 p.m., 2 a.m. is probably when my body officially starts fasting. So if I start my fast at 2 a.m., then the next morning at 2 a.m., I had 24 hours. Or that afternoon at 2 p.m., I get 12 hours of fasting. Well, 12 hours of fasting increases HGH by about 1,000%. So if you're 70 years old and you're making 120 milligrams a day, that bumps you back up to about 1,200 milligrams a day, which is about what you had maybe in your 20s or your 30s. So there's a lot to be said for that. You increase your length of fasting, your percentage of HGH increases accordingly. There's a lot of things there with fasting that we could go into, but we're not right this moment. But normally our glucose metabolism, how we process that blood sugar, how we get our energy, is controlled by insulin. However, when we fast, the glucose metabolism is shifting over to being controlled by HGH. And if you don't have HGH enough to control it, now we have a problem. But when you start changing over in that fasting mechanism, that 8, 10, 12, 15 hours of not eating, we change over from our energy source from glucose to fat or ketones. And HGH is very important in that particular role. In fact, there's just so many things. In fact, I was getting to it right now. When I look at my blood sugar, if I keep my blood sugar levels low, our HGH has a tendency to be higher. But our brain also makes insulin-like growth factor, IGF-1. And when you look at the combination of insulin, HGH, and this insulin-like growth factor, they all have a finger in controlling our carbohydrate metabolism. So we get into our liver and we have these things being created. The insulin-like growth factor, I think, is in the liver, not the brain, but my brain is kind of fuzzy right this minute. Who knows? Anyway, the high blood sugar levels increase risk of glaucoma, atherosclerosis, neuropathies, infections. It also has effect on our hormone balance, cardiovascular system. It affects our weight immensely with regard to gaining weight. But all of those things have an interactive role. And if insulin's high and IGF-1 is low and HGH is low, then you're not maintaining what we consider a normal, healthy environment for your body to operate. Exercise. Exercise increases HGH, but it's incrementally. If I'm doing it as a anaerobic exercise, in other words, I'm pushing weights, I'm sprinting, high intensity exercise. Sprinting is probably the absolute number one best way to raise HGH levels. You go out and you run as fast as you can for 20, 25, 30 seconds. Then you take 30 seconds to 90 seconds off and you do it again and again and again. Sometimes you're just out swimming or you're jogging or whatever. This is kind of a more of a aerobic exercise. Yeah, there's still some benefits there, but not the same as the high intensity out. A lot of different ways of measuring the effectiveness of our exercise. Lactic acid threshold, is fairly easy to see if you're a big time runner, into exercise. Those are one of the things that can in fact happen a lot with regard to our ability to train effectively. I use minimum heart rate. I take every time I finish running, I'll take my heart rate, whatever my heart rate is, 155, and I'll measure how long does it take to get under 120. And there's another thing called the Borg scale, not in the sense of the Borgs that we hear about on some of the science fiction stuff, but there's actually a Borg scale that measures our level of exercise. But exercise is a balancing act. Just because we go out and run every day doesn't mean we're maximizing our exercise. Same thing with weightlifting all the time. We need balance, we need strength, we need endurance, we need stability, we need flexibility. All of those things should be part of an overall exercise program. Sleeping, we talked about that already. But sleeping is when we do the body repairs. Our body needs the rest to restore itself, to repair everything. HGH is super critical because it activates all those mechanisms to make those things happen. And our sleep goes through cycles, roughly about 90 minutes, 100 minutes. You go through the entire sleep process and then you start it over again and over again. So if you're taking a nap in the afternoon, and it's not just 7 or 8 minutes, that's usually what I do. If you really are tired and you really need a good nap, plan on about 90 minutes. And what you do is you go through that one sleep cycle, and then before you start the next sleep cycle, that's probably not going to affect your going to sleep later that evening. Staying awake, no sleep, no HGH production. Simple as that. If you have a late meal, you have a lot of alcohol at night, you're not doing your stress management, it's going to affect your sleep quality and affect your HGH production. Now, from here, we're going to go into several different other topics. I want to delve into telomeres. We talked a lot about HGH and how it affects us, but the telomere length and longevity is a very critical instruction. But just because we have all these things, we have something that controls everything we do, and that's our genes. And we're going to go into a lot of depth about that because epigenetically is our lifestyle. Those are the choices that we make to turn that gene on or turn that gene off. And there's a lot of healthy habits we can have for our future health. At the book there on the right, if you're looking at the screen, says Longevity Secrets for Healthy Aging. A lot of the information I got today comes out of that book. I wrote that book several years ago. It does talk a lot more about what I went into today, a lot more detail. So if you're interested in that particular book, it's available on my website, redolaughlin.com, or also on Amazon. The Joy of Ageless Health is my number one best-selling book on Amazon, and it goes into the causes of disease and what you can do about it. So if you need to contact me, redolaughlin.com. That's REDOLAUGHLIN.com. My contact information is in the banner. Give me a call on the phone or send me an email. Those are my two primary preferred ways of communication. And with that, I'm going to close out this session. I look forward to seeing you next Thursday afternoon. We'll go into part 2 of longevity and lifestyle. Take care. Bye now.